first thing Mark noticed when he woke up was the silence. Not the usual comforting kind that came with early mornings, but a thick, unnatural stillness, as if the world outside had been muffled. His apartment felt different, though he couldn't place why. He rubbed his eyes, stretched, and swung his legs over the side of the bed. The hardwood floor was colder than usual. As he shuffled toward the kitchen, his mind still heavy with the sleep, he stopped abruptly. There, at the end of the hallway, was a door. Mark lived alone in a one-bedroom apartment. He knew every inch of his place, every creaky floorboard, every stubborn cabinet hinge. And yet, somehow, there was a door that hadn't been there before. It was tall, painted a dull, off-white color, and completely unremarkable, except for the fact that it had no right to exist. His breath caught in his throat. Maybe he was still dreaming. He squeezed his eyes shut, shook his head, and looked again. The door remained. A pit formed in his stomach. He took a step closer. The air around it felt heavier, like the space itself was bending in a way it shouldn't. His fingers twitched at his sides. He reached for the knob. Ice. That was the first sensation that flooded through him when his fingertips brushed the metal. It was unnaturally cold, like it had been sitting in a freezer for hours. A slow, creeping dread slithered up his spine. He yanked his hand away. Maybe it was some kind of prank. A hidden door left behind by a previous tenant. A closet he'd somehow never noticed. None of it made sense. He lived in this apartment for 5 years. There was no way he'd missed something this obvious. He stepped back, his pulse thrumming in his ears. This wasn't right. Deciding he needed coffee before dealing with whatever this was, he turned away and went to the kitchen. The simple routine of brewing a pot, pouring a cup, and taking a long sip grounded him. Maybe he was just overtired. Maybe stress was making him see things. But when he walked back down the hall, coffee mug in hand, the door was still there. It felt like it was watching him. Mark spent the rest of the morning trying to go about his usual routine, checking emails, scrolling through his phone, getting dressed. But his thoughts kept drifting back to that impossible door. By noon, he had convinced himself to investigate further. Armed with nothing but his phone's flashlight and a deep sense of unease, he reached out again. The cold had faded, but the knob still felt wrong somehow. Too smooth, too solid, as if it didn't quite belong in this world. He twisted it. Locked. A strange mix of relief and frustration coursed through him. He pressed his ear against the wood. Silence. Not the kind you'd expect from an empty room, but something deeper. Hollow. The thought of what could be behind it gnawed at him for the rest of the day. He ran his hands along the edges, tapping against the walls, trying to figure out where it led. No hinges on the outside, no signs of construction, just a door that shouldn't be there. By the time night fell, exhaustion had dulled his anxiety. He told himself he'd deal with it tomorrow, but when he woke up the next morning, the door was gone. At first, he thought maybe the previous day had been a bizarre waking dream, but as he made his way to the kitchen, he saw it again, this time on the opposite wall. His stomach dropped. It had moved. His mind reeled. This wasn't possible. Doors didn't just shift locations overnight. The rational part of him screamed that there had to be an explanation, but deep down, something told him there wasn't. And then, the worst thought of all crept into his mind. If the door could move, was something moving it? The air in his apartment felt heavier, thick with something unseen. He clenched his fists, refusing to let paranoia take hold. himself that this was just some bizarre trick of his own mind. Again, he reached for the handle. Still locked. He exhaled, long and slow. Maybe this was some kind of sleep disorder. Maybe stress was making him hallucinate. He grabbed his phone and took a picture, needing proof that he wasn't losing it. That night, as he lay in bed, sleep didn't come easily. The thought of that door, lurking just beyond his bedroom wall, shifting in the dark, kept his muscles tense and his eyes open. Every small noise made his breath hitch. At some point, exhaustion took over, and he drifted off. The next morning, the door had moved again. This time, it was in his bedroom. It stood just feet from his bed, nestled between his dresser and the far wall. The sight of it sent a bolt of raw panic through him. Number. No, this wasn't happening. He scrambled out of bed, heart pounding. His fingers trembled as he reached for the knob. Locked. His breaths came in sharp, shallow bursts. He backed away, his mind racing. He needed to get out of here. Needed to leave. Needed to. A sound. Faint. Almost imperceptible. A single, quiet click. The door had unlocked. Mark didn't move. His breath hitched, his pulse a frantic drumbeat in his ears. The click had been soft, almost delicate, but it rang through the silence of the room like a gunshot. His eyes locked onto the door handle, waiting, dreading, expecting it to turn. It didn't. The door remained still, silent, as if mocking him. He forced himself to take a shaky step forward. His hand hovered over the knob, fingers twitching. The cold from before had faded, replaced by something worse, something he could only describe as wrong, a sensation that made his stomach twist and his skin crawl. He gritted his teeth and turned the handle. Locked. A shuddering breath escaped his lips. He had heard the click. He knew it had unlocked, but now it refused to open. Something was playing with him. He stumbled back, grabbing his phone. He needed to call someone, anyone. But when he unlocked the screen, his stomach dropped. The photo he had taken of the door the day before was gone. Not in his camera roll, not in his recently deleted folder. Just gone. His hands shook. He navigated to his contacts. His fingers hovered over the screen, ready to call a friend. He could hear the dial tone in his mind, the relief of another human voice. Then, his phone screen flickered and shut off. Dead. Even though it had been at 70% just minutes ago. His apartment felt too quiet. The walls seemed closer. The air, heavier. He needed to get out. Mark grabbed his keys and bolted for the front door. His fingers fumbled at the lock, twisting, yanking, pulling. It wouldn't budge. He slammed his palm against the wood, panic rising. His apartment had never had problems with the locks before. He turned, panting, chest rising and falling in sharp gasps. The door. It wasn't by the dresser anymore. It was by the bathroom. His vision blurred for a moment, his brain unable to process what he was seeing. It had moved. Again. Not overnight. Not while he was sleeping. It had moved while he was looking away. Mark pressed himself against the front door, his nails digging into the wood. His mind raced, trying to grasp onto logic, reason, anything that could explain this. Nothing came. The door stood there, silent, unmoving, but he could feel it. Something waiting, watching, testing him. A cold sweat slicked his skin. He squeezed his eyes shut. He just needed to breathe, think. Minutes passed. When he opened his eyes, the door was gone. A strangled sound escaped his throat. His body refused to move for several long seconds. He scanned the apartment. every corner, every wall, searching. The door had disappeared, just like before. But it wasn't relief that flooded him. It was fear, because now he had no idea where it was. For the rest of the day, Mark avoided every wall. He stayed in the center of the room, afraid to turn his back to anything. He didn't eat. He didn't check the time. He barely moved. By nightfall, exhaustion weighed on him like a lead blanket. His body screamed for rest, but his mind wouldn't allow it. He couldn't sleep. He couldn't. If he slept, the door would move again. He might wake up with it inches from his face. Or worse, he might wake up inside. He tried to fight it. He drank water, splashed cold liquid on his face, paced in circles. It didn't matter. At some point, sleep won. He woke up to darkness. A stillness hung in the air, pressing against him like a suffocating weight. His body was frozen, his mind caught between the haze of sleep and the razor-edged awareness of something being very, very wrong. The silence was different tonight. It wasn't the absence of noise. It was the presence of something waiting. Slowly, carefully, he turned his head. The door was inches from his bedside. A strangled gasp tore from his throat. He scrambled backward, nearly falling off the bed. The door loomed over him, a silent monolith in the dark. The off-white paint seemed darker now, tinged with something deep, rotten. His breath came in shallow, panicked bursts. He reached for his lamp, fingers trembling so badly, he almost knocked it over. Light flooded the room. The door was gone. Mark pressed his hands to his face, his entire body shaking. He couldn't live like this. He couldn't stay here. Morning couldn't come fast enough. The moment the sun rose, he packed a bag. Clothes, wallet, phone charger. Whatever he could grab in the haze of panic. He didn't care about leaving things behind. He needed out. But when he reached the front door, he froze. It was open, just slightly. A sliver of darkness beyond. His throat clenched. He had tried to open it yesterday. He had yanked and pulled and slammed against it, and it hadn't moved. But now, it was open. A trap. Slowly, he reached for the handle. A breeze, cold and damp, slipping through the crack. His mind screamed at him to run. But where? The windows wouldn't open. The locks wouldn't turn. He swallowed hard and pulled the door open. The hallway was gone. His apartment should have led to a well-lit corridor, other doors, the sound of distant conversations and footsteps. Instead, there was only blackness, not the kind found in unlit rooms, where the shapes of furniture still cast vague shadows. This was a void, a complete absence of light, depth, space. It wasn't empty. Something was in there, watching, breathing. The door slammed shut. Mark staggered backward, his pulse a deafening roar in his ears. His apartment had trapped him. It wouldn't let him go. Not his apartment. The door. It was toying with him. He stumbled away from the front door, chest rising and falling in panicked gasps. His vision blurred. His thoughts splintered into jagged edges. And then, another sound. Software subtle. A creak. He turned. The door was back. This time, it was in the kitchen. And it was open. Just slightly. Something moved behind it. Something waiting. Testing. It wanted him to come closer. Mark clenched his fists, forcing himself to breathe. He would not play its game. He would not go near it. Slowly, he backed away. The moment he looked away, the sound came again. Creak. His head snapped up. The door had moved. It was closer. His breath came in ragged gasps. He blinked. Just once. Creak. Closer. Tears burned at the edges of his vision. He couldn't look away. He couldn't blink. If he did, creak. His legs buckled. He squeezed his eyes shut, willing it all to disappear, to wake up, to be anywhere but here. Silence. He opened his eyes. The door was gone. But now, so were all the other doors. The front door, the bathroom, the closet. His apartment had become a box with no exit. Mark let out a broken, ragged sound. He was trapped. No way out. No way. A breath. Not his. Behind him. He turned. The door stood there, wide open, and inside, something moved. Mark's body refused to move. His muscles locked in place. His breath caught in his throat. The door was open now, fully open, and for the first time, he could see beyond it. Darkness stretched beyond the frame, but it wasn't empty. It pulsed, shifting like thick black smoke, writhing against the edges of the door as if it were struggling to contain something. The longer he stared, the more it felt like the space itself was breathing. Slow, deep inhalations, dragging him closer. Something moved within the dark. A shape. No, many shapes. He stepped back, but the air in his apartment had changed. It was heavier now, dense, pressing against his chest. It was harder to breathe, as though the very space around him was thickening, folding in on itself. The door was watching him. Not just something inside it. No, the door itself. It was alive in some way he couldn't understand. It had been testing him, drawing him in, pulling him closer, bit by bit. And now, it was done waiting. The floor beneath his feet groaned. Not like wood settling. No, it was deeper than that. A vibration traveled up his legs, through his bones. It felt like the entire apartment was shifting, tilting toward the open door. A pressure built behind his eyes. His ears popped. The darkness beyond the door churned, thickened. And then, a hand emerged. It wasn't human. The fingers were too long, the joints bending in ways they shouldn't. The skin, or what should have been skin, was slick, black, shifting like it was made of something liquid. More followed. A second hand. A third. A fourth. Mark's stomach twisted. The thing wasn't crawling out. It was climbing out. He turned, sprinting toward the wall where his front door should have been. There was nothing there. No exit. No escape. The walls stretched taller, longer, the apartment warping around him like a living thing. A low sound vibrated through the space, crawling under his skin, slipping into his mind. A voice, but not one he could understand. It wasn't speaking words. It was speaking through him, inside him. The air turned thick, like water pressing against his limbs. He struggled to move, to breathe. Behind him, the thing pulled itself further from the door, its shape shifting, growing, filling the space with its impossible, writhing form. It wasn't just in the apartment now. It was the apartment. The walls pulsed, the ceiling stretched. The floor beneath his feet was no longer solid. Mark clawed at the space where his front door had been. His fingernails scraped against nothingness. His body felt heavier, sinking into the thickening air. The voice grew louder. Not words, not commands. Understanding. This was never his apartment. It was never his space. It had always belonged to it. The door had been patient. It had tested him, watched him. And when it was ready, when he was ready, it had opened. The walls folded inward. The last sliver of light beyond his window dimmed, faded, swallowed by the blackness curling through the room. Mark turned one last time, and in that final moment, he saw it fully. The thing that had been waiting. It had no face, no eyes, nothing that should have made it recognizable. But he knew it. It had always been here. waiting for him to see. And as the last of the light vanished, as the door finally closed,